Disney is a company that needs no introduction. Ever since Mickey Mouse was created and became this instant icon, the company took off creating countless memorable and iconic characters over the past century. Granted, the company in the last 10 to 15 years has certainly been questionable at best, with numerous misfires and downright bad decisions that have hurt the company's image immensely.
They're crap. Crap, mega crap.
In the past though, Disney was pretty much a surefire powerhouse that would typically put out amazing family-friendly content. I used to think they were the Nintendo of family-friendly movies and shows. Of course, Disney IPs have had quite their share entering the video game market, ranging from some truly awesome games to hidden gems to some serious clunkers as well. In this episode, I want to check out all of the Disney licensed games that were actually exclusive to the Nintendo GameCube. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this episode. The first Disney exclusive to release on the GameCube is Disney's Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse, published by Nintendo and developed by Capcom. Capcom is no stranger to working on Disney titles on Nintendo platforms, especially with the Super Nintendo's Magical Quest games, Goof Troop, and Aladdin, to just name a few. Magical Mirror is something very different for Capcom though, as this GameCube exclusive is actually an interactive point-and-click adventure that Shigeru Miyamoto produced. Mickey Mouse falls into a deep sleep one night and a ghost pulls his dream self out into a different dimension through a magical mirror. Upon waking up in this state, Mickey discovers himself sleeping in a mirror in the real world, and while looking, the ghost appears and attacks the mirror, which then shatters it in the process. It's at this point that you must collect the mirrored shards throughout the mansion that you're in to try and get back into the real world. As you go through the mansion, you will need to interact with the environment for Mickey to search every nook and cranny, while also clicking around the area to move him around. As you try to find the mirror shards, you will come across the mischievous ghost that trapped you initially, and he tries to scare you away. However, you will acquire stars, which give Mickey the courage to stand up against anything that tries to scare him away, essentially pulling off a trick to combat fear and flip the script on the ghost. There will be numerous puzzles to solve throughout the mansion, and some may stump you like this doorway one here. You will also have to collect items that can be used to solve various other puzzles, and you may need to backtrack a bit throughout the mansion. I do wish there was a map of sorts, because it really would make the backtracking aspect just a little bit easier. This is definitely a slower paced game, and coming from other Capcom developed Disney titles in the past may seem more off-putting. But I have to say, I was enjoying my time with Magical Mirror quite a bit, as it's the first GameCube game I played alongside my daughter a few years ago, and she loved just seeing Mickey on screen being silly, and it gave me a few chuckles as well. It's definitely a game that's meant for more younger audiences, but can be enjoyed playing it with your kids. Visually, the game has a very nice art direction going for it, and the overall presentation is definitely of quality. There's something about the game's atmosphere and trying to understand why Mickey was brought here that'll keep you engaged enough to the end. It's not for everyone, but if you enjoy point-and-click adventure games, which the GameCube didn't really have any of, this is one worth checking out. It does feel like a game that could have benefited on the Wii actually, using the pointer controls.
Okay. What? Whoa! 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 Whoa!
Next up is Monsters Inc. Scream Arena, published by THQ and developed by Radical Entertainment. Monsters Inc. was a great Pixar film, and games based on the property were inevitable with it being a new IP for Disney. The game starts off with an intro that does the property right, having the original actors reprising their roles like John Goodman and Billy Crystal. However, it's clear that the budget went entirely to the voice cast. Monsters Inc. Scream Arena is a multiplayer-centric party game of sorts. You choose from a cast of characters from the film, enter an arena, and throw dodgeballs at each other. I mean, the best way to sum this game up quickly is if you play a minigame in Mario Party, and not even one of the better ones, but just one of the ones that's okay at best, and then you make that particular minigame an entire game on its own, well, that's Monsters Inc. Scream Arena in a nutshell. You run around picking up dodgeballs to throw at your opponents, and whoever gets the most points wins. Now, there are various stages you can play on, and there are different types of dodgeballs you can use, like this bubble ball that has an opponent get suspended in the air, or this sticky ball that stuns your opponents and lets you take a few shots at them without them flinching. The problem though is that where there's something like Super Dodgeball that makes the sport so much fun to play in video game form, Monsters Inc. Scream Arena is incredibly boring and unexciting. The arenas themselves aren't anything to write home about, and the various mission types you do in the single player are average at best, and that's being kind. Things like throwing the ball at all the targets quickly or hold the green ball as long as possible, I mean, they're okay, they're just not fun. Even visually, what's appalling is that the game runs so poorly with choppy animations and it barely holds 30 frames a second, which makes no sense since there's nothing crazy happening on screen at all. It's not like there's these massive arenas with all these AI opponents, it's literally these small arenas with 4 players at most. Additionally, the AI is pretty dumb in this game, and you can exploit them easily by running back and forth in the teleporting doors, or even not moving at all and simply picking up the ball, throwing it, have it come back to you, and repeat. Simply just pressing the A button essentially. You can dodge and deflect the ball, but I felt like deflecting the ball never felt enjoyable to do. I also want to highlight the overly repetitive intro cutscenes for each arena, which are 5 to 10 second clips that are the exact same thing each time you start a new mission.
Welcome to Sim Control, my name is Miss Flint. Now, let's go over the fundamental rules of laughter. Welcome to Sim Control, my name is Miss Flint. Now, let's go over the fundamental rules of laughter. Welcome to Sim Control, my name is Miss Flint. Now, let's go over the fundamental rules of laughter.
They're just awkward and they're not even the slightest bit funny, they just feel out of place. Overall, this is very well the weakest game in the Disney exclusive lineup. I can't imagine anyone who bought this at full price. I'd have been ticked off if I spent $50 on this one.
May have to go into overtime.
Employee of the Year.
Next up, we'll be covering the entire Disney Sports lineup. The first one is Disney Sports Soccer, published by Konami and developed by Konami Entertainment Osaka. For time's sake, all 4 of the sports titles I'm covering here were handled by the same publisher and development team throughout. Now, Konami is very well versed with making soccer games, or football overseas, with their Winning 11 and Pro Evolution Soccer series of titles, so making a soccer game was a no-brainer for them. However, unlike those titles, this is a more arcade-style soccer game where you choose your favorite Disney character's team, take to the field, and play a solid game of soccer. Controls are fairly easy to grasp on both the offensive and defensive side of things, using the face buttons to pass and shoot and change players, while you can also utilize the C-stick to manually aim where to kick the ball if you like. As you progress through the game, you will unlock magic shoes that you can equip before a match, giving the captain of the team an extra advantage, like this boom shot here that can sometimes knock the goalie out of the way when shooting at the goal. You can tackle the Exhibition, Dream Cup, and Challenge Cup modes throughout the game. The Dream Cup is basically the tournament-style bracket, while the Challenge Cup is about defeating all 8 teams in any order that you'd like. Additionally, you can also customize the teams here. You can name each player individually and tweak stats based on the amount of points allocated per team. This is actually a pretty neat feature and it helps personalize the team more. Back to the actual gameplay though, I do have to say, this is by far the most polished of the 4 sports titles. Again, them having a good background in soccer games does help quite a bit. Passing, shooting, throw-ins, goal kicks, corner kicks, it all feels solid. This is one that I recall getting in my childhood the same day that I also bought Dead to Rights on the GameCube. I know, 2 entirely different types of games I can get in that single day, but I have to say I always enjoyed my time with this game. Even revisiting it for this episode, I was still having a good time with it. The one gripe I do have though is that almost every stadium feels the same despite the images shown in the menu, and it feels like a lost opportunity for the more inventive locales that you'll see with the follow-up Disney Sports titles.
Player number 8. This one's directly to you. Player number 4. This may be it. Trying to block the way. How about that? There it is! 35 minutes into the first half. Dano does it again. They answer the cheering of their fans.
And the second installment of the Disney Sports franchise is Disney Sports Skateboarding, which released the same day as Disney Sports Soccer in North America on November 12, 2002. Given the extreme sports scene still being very popular thanks to Tony Hawk and the massive cultural phenomenon that the Pro Skater games became, Konami wanted to dip into that with this Disney Sports lineup. Granted, they made Evolution Skateboarding prior as a competitor or alternative to the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, and that engine is basically used here. Disney Sports Skateboarding has you choose from one of the various iconic Disney characters, much like in the soccer game, and tackle various stages, each with objectives in the challenge mode, which is the main mode in this game. You'll board through fairly big maps, trying to complete objectives like scoring a certain number of points, hitting X number of objects, collecting all the crystals in the map, and pulling off a certain number of tricks within a combo. Now, there are many things that sets this game apart from others in the genre. First off, there are 5 checkpoints in each level, and you will need to find all of them to open the end stage gate. You will have a timer when starting a stage, typically over 5 minutes or so, and if you don't unlock the end gate despite even completing objectives, you'll have to retry the whole level, meaning you'll have to redo those objectives if you fail to get to that end gate. The levels are also unique, with either wide open maps to explore or something more linear like the second stage over here. There's also a trick championship mode where it's all about doing tricks on a half pipe across 3 heats as well as 3 different locales in the end. Tricks are handled with the face buttons and combined with analog stick movements for different tricks. You can also use the L and R triggers to rotate the board. I will say the trick system is very akin to Evolution Skateboarding. Again, it's using the same engine, which is a bit more stiff to acclimate to. Once you do, you should be okay. The problem I have with this game more than anything though is the erratic frame rate that tanks the control response. There's something underlying here that is quite solid, but the stiff controls combined with the unresponsive nature due to those frame dips make this a tough one to recommend. Maybe I'll do a more in-depth review for this one eventually. Let me know if this is one you'd like to see a review for. But in the meantime, as far as skateboarding games go, even for younger audiences, yeah, this one's not quite one I'd recommend. And the third installment in Konami's sports series is Disney Sports Football, which released a month after the previous 2 installments on December 17th, 2002 in North America. Moving on to one of the most popular sports in America, you can now take Mickey and the gang onto the gridiron. This arcade-style football game has you choosing from your favorite Disney character teams and tackling a variety of modes like exhibition, season, and challenge modes, as well as a practice mode. Upon taking the field, you'd start to think the game would play similar to that of other American football games, until you start throwing the ball to your players. At that point, you realize, well, this isn't quite as polished. Controls do take some getting used to, and after snapping the ball, you'll either use the A button or push the C stick in a direction that applies to the player you want to throw to. The problem is that when you throw the ball to your receivers, they will need to basically finish running to the spot the play designates them to be able to have a chance of catching the ball. Throwing it early will have you throwing the ball at the exact location the playbook shows, regardless of who you throw to, and even if they're nowhere near the ball yet. And furthermore, you need to press the A button right before the ball hits the player to catch it, making for a very awkward and honestly irritating mechanic. I'm all for breaking the mold or breaking the convention, but it just doesn't work well here. You can also use magic abilities that you can equip via items acquired throughout the game, which is an interesting aspect. On a positive note, I do love that the stadiums are all very unique and vibrant, making it more interesting to choose a stadium here than that of a sim-based football game where you choose a stadium, but realistically, is there any difference? And I mean, come on, how cool is this that you get to play football on a suspended glass field? This is actually pretty creative. Also, there's a cool customization mode here where you can create players to draft onto your team, and you can create custom plays, which actually works quite well here. While it's not a great football game or even a good football game, if you can grasp the mechanics, there is definitely some charm to be found here. Just know at the end of the day that what's here is not going to blow your mind, but if you're a Disney fan and you like football and you're looking for something with the younger audiences, well, this might actually fit the bill.
Sea-Dogs, 3rd down, 10 yards to go. These linemen have got to pay attention or they're going to be caught off guard. Spectabulous! The Sea-Dogs! 6 more points! 13-0! Tight end, Marvin!
Now, the last of the 4 Disney sports titles is Disney Sports Basketball, which released on January 14th, 2003 in North America. Here it is, folks, the most expensive game on the GameCube. No, it's not Pokemon Box, because Pokemon Box is not a game. Let's get that clear. The most expensive game, something that you actually play, is Disney Sports Basketball. This 3v3 arcade-style basketball game has you choosing one of several teams, each having an iconic Disney character as the captain or guard in this sport, while having 2 other generic characters as supporting teammates. Except for Huey, Dewey, and Louie, which they end up comprising themselves of their own team, which is actually kind of neat. You can partake in your standard exhibition matches, as well as a challenge mode and season mode. There is also a tutorial that does a fairly decent job at getting the core mechanics taught to you. Gameplay here is, as expected with the Disney Sports series, arcade style. However, much like the other games, the controls do take a bit of getting used to. You will shoot with the A button, pass the teammates with X and Y depending on their highlighted button assignments over them, which also affects changing players as well, and you could use the B button to protect the ball in a sense. The R trigger is a modifier where you can dash past an opponent if you're holding down the button, or you can slam dunk combining the R and A buttons. Interestingly, there's a meter on the top center of the HUD that shows a basketball going towards whichever team is dominating. When fully on a team side, Fever Mode is initiated, which adds an additional bonus point for every 2 or 3-pointer shot made. Furthermore, if you time pressing the A button to the moment a slam dunk occurs on the basket rim itself, you will earn a special point in your special gauge. Fill this up 3 times, and you can initiate a special shot when in the glowing spot of the court, which results in a flashy move. The amount of courts here is really neat, much like the other sports games, and each one feels unique enough to enjoy. I will say, initially, I wasn't sure if I'd enjoy this game, especially with the mixed bag some of these have been, and while there are better ones out there, much like I've stated before, there's no denying my enjoyment with this one specifically as I acclimated to the mechanics. But man, that announcer is really irritating. And here's the interesting point to note, now that I've covered all 4 of these here, is that there's only one game you're allowed to shut off the announcer, which is the Disney skateboarding one, which is bizarre. Why not have that option in all of them with how bad he is in all 4 games? Anyway, Disney Sports Basketball. Is it $1,200 good? No, God no, there's no game worth $1,200. However, is this game actually a somewhat decent game? Absolutely.
Inbound going to the Charmer. Mini! Shoot! Spectabulous! Inbound going to the Sea-Dogs. It's in Donald. Charges past Mini. Electra dunk! Perfect! Can only be described as a star.
Now, before diving into the other exclusives, here's another thing I want to point out with these 4 sports titles. What's interesting to note is that while there were 4 titles for the GameCube, there were 6 on the Game Boy Advance. The same 4 featured here, followed by Disney Sports Motocross and Disney Sports Snowboarding. I have to say, both of these games are surprisingly decent entries, but what's more interesting is that the snowboarding installment featured a Game Boy Advance GameCube Link capability, but there was no snowboarding installment to connect this to the GameCube version, which begs the question, was Konami planning GameCube versions of these titles as well that we just never heard about? The snowboarding installment alone could have easily used the Evolution Snowboarding game engine, which is actually another hidden gem for the GameCube, which I'll link a review for in the description down below, or in this card up here. I find the aspect of the Disney Sports lineup of GameCube and Game Boy Advance games to be a very interesting one, to be honest. And one more thing to highlight, with the file sizes of these games being far smaller than that of the 1.46GB storage available on the GameCube optical disc, I can't help but feel that they easily could have just fit all 4 of these titles on a single disc, which would have made for a far more compelling package for the attractive price point. But again, I'm still pondering about the idea of a motocross and snowboarding one that could have came out alongside the Game Boy Advance versions. Alright, with my 2 cents said there, let's move on to the following Disney exclusives that were on the GameCube. Next up is Disney Party, published by Electronic Arts and developed by Hudson. With the success of the Mario Party series, interactive game boards started to become more prevalent and Disney was looking to have their own, so much so that they literally got the same developer as Mario Party to work on this. However, this plays nothing like Mario Party, but instead has a lot more rules to understand, so much so that you'll be dumped a ton of exposition on the rules that'll feel quite overwhelming your first playthrough, to be honest. Choosing your favorite Disney character here, you will go to the board with 3 other players or AI opponents. Instead of it being a traditional board though, you will go along various islands where there are many unique spaces to land on. There are no dice to roll, but rather a spinning wheel, where the odds of the spaces to land on depend on all the players' choices. What I mean is that players may need to work together to increase the odds of landing on a specific part of the spinning wheel to go to the location they want. So if there are choices for either a minigame, shopping location, or another type of location, players will choose which they'd prefer to go to, and whoever stands on whichever place they'd like to go to will adjust the odds of going to those locations once the wheel is spun. This is a very unique approach, and I do applaud them for trying something very different here. Initially, this didn't click with me, but the more I played it, the more it started to click. However, it's the various islands you will go to where they each have specific aspects that make it feel like a bit much at times. Additionally, there's the game board card, which you will need to fill up to win. This is essentially a bingo card, and buying items with crystals collected or winning minigames lets you place items earned on the board, but you must have the same base color as the color space to place the item on. You can also win stars that can be placed anywhere despite the color space. Once a player fills the card, you can tackle the final minigame, and then it'll all come down to the awards to see who had the best match overall. I know, it sounds pretty convoluted, and to be very honest, the first playthrough, it very much is. But I guess there's a bit of a learning curve with this one. The minigames here from what I've played are not very good and feel pretty half-baked. Surprising considering that Hudson isn't new to this type of game, and they've had some serious winners on their hands with the Mario Party installments. From the time I put into this one, I have to say it's definitely not the most inviting party game to play with family and friends, and rather feels more complicated than it needs to be. It almost reminds me of the absurdity of Bamboozled from the show Friends. It just feels so random. To wrap up the Disney GameCube exclusives is Disney's Hide and Sneak, published and developed by Capcom. Disney's Hide and Sneak is definitely the most unique Disney exclusive of the bunch, as it's basically Metal Gear Mickey, or Metal Gear Minnie. Choosing between Mickey or Minnie, whomever you choose, the opposite character will be captured by an alien called Lulu that crash landed on the planet. You'll chase after Lulu to save the character needing saving, and you'll begin by entering an abandoned warehouse. You'll see other Lulus searching the rooms you're in, trying to stop you, and you can't quite defend yourself against these aliens. So instead, Mickey or Minnie will need to resort to pure stealth, jumping on top of boxes, hiding in barrels, hiding under shelves, etc. Controls are quite simple, in which you literally just use the A and B buttons, with the A button being the interact button and the B button letting you run if you hold it down, or simply pressing it will let you taunt and get the Lulu's attention. The analog stick naturally is to move, and you'll use the C stick to slightly look around. Now, there are tricks you can do sort of to defend yourself against Lulus, or pull off special actions that help you progress in the game. As you explore rooms, occasionally doors will be locked and you'll need to find the key in that room so you can actually escape. You'll have to collect stars that you can store, and certain actions require a certain number of full stars to be in your inventory per se. You can expand the capacity for these and collect star fragments throughout rooms. Additionally, you'll notice that certain items are attached to the Lulu's back, and if you can do a sneak attack behind them, you can actually acquire the item that they're holding onto. Now, getting hit a single time will make you lose a life and restart the room that you're in. If you run out of lives, you'll be loading your last save location. What's frustrating, honestly, is that not only do the lives carry over to your last save point, but the camera itself is abysmal. This was released the same year as Dino Crisis 3, and I swear it makes me wonder if the same person did the camera work here that did that game. You're always walking towards the camera, or it's too zoomed in to see enemies that await around corners, leading to cheap deaths quite often. I will say, while it does have its issues though, I am somewhat intrigued to revisit this and finish it. With half the exclusives being from the Disney Sports lineup and others being some unique offerings, I think it's interesting to highlight these titles. Sure, some might not be very good or even worth your time, but others are quite solid and worthy of checking out. So, what do you guys think? Have you played any of these? Any that interest you now? Sound off in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Additionally, shout out to my first YouTube member that is helping further support the channel, Local S'mores Pop-Tart. If you really enjoy the content and are interested in further supporting the channel, click that join button, and for $2 a month, you'll get early access to videos, membership shoutouts and videos, and exclusive icons that I made that go next to your username when commenting. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next episode, GCG Nation.